see bigotry, oppose it. If you see violence, condemn it. If you see a bully, stand up to him.
I speak to you today as a lifelong supporter and true friend of Israel.
From my first trip to Israel in 1982 to my most recent, I have seen firsthand what Israel has achieved. The desert is blooming again, and we can be so proud of the role that America has played in this success.
I'm a newcomer to politics, but not to backing the Jewish state.
My support for Israel does not come recently or lightly.
But we've always shared an unwavering, unshakable commitment to our alliance and to Israel's future as a secure and democratic homeland for the Jewish people.
In spring of 2004, at the height of the violence in the Gaza Strip, I was the Grand Marshal of the 40th Salute to Israel Parade, the largest single gathering in support of the Jewish state. For anyone supporting Israel, many people turned down this honor. I did not. I took the risk, and I'm glad I did.
On a personal level, I was honored when Natan accepted my invitation to come to New York and walk with me in our Salute to Israel parade. In a way, we are still walking together.
Let me be clear. An agreement imposed by the United Nations would be a total and complete disaster. The United States must oppose this resolution and use the power of our veto, which I will use as president 100%.
And let me be clear, I would vigorously oppose any attempt by outside parties to impose a solution, including by the UN Security Council.
When I'm president, believe me, I will veto any attempt by the UN to impose its will on the Jewish state. It will be vetoed 100%.
Israel must stop settlement expansion and the demolition or confiscation of donor-funded aid, including with EU taxpayers' money.
One of the first things I'll do in office is invite the Israeli Prime Minister to visit the White House.
I will meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu immediately. I have known him for many years and will be able to work closely together.
And I will send a delegation from the Pentagon and the Joint Chiefs to Israel for early consultations.
And we will send a clear signal that there is no daylight between America and our most reliable ally, the State of Israel.
And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected president, the United States will reaffirm we have a strong and enduring national interest in Israel's security. And we will never allow Israel's adversaries to think a wedge can be driven between us.
With President Obama in his final year, yay. He may be the worst thing to ever happen to Israel, believe me. Believe me. And you know it, and you know it better than anybody.
That's why I believe we must take our alliance to the next level. I hope a new 10-year defense memorandum of understanding is concluded as soon as possible to meet Israel's security needs far into the future.
The United States and Israel have reached an agreement on a new 10-year pact that includes at least $38 billion in U.S. military aid. This deal will be the largest pledge of U.S. military aid made to any country.
But we will not compromise our commitment to preventing Iran from acquiring these nuclear weapons.
That Iran is going to violate it because already, as you know, it has.
So let me be very clear. The United States is determined to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons.
Iran will have an industrial-sized military nuclear capability ready to go and with zero provision for delay, no matter how bad Iran's behavior is. Terrible, terrible situation that we are all placed in, and especially Israel.
It's also why, as president, I will make a firm commitment to ensure Israel maintains its qualitative military edge.
But Iran doesn't frighten me, and I don't think it should frighten the American people. They don't have a bomb. They haven't made a decision to build one. They don't have the means to deliver one. And the Israelis have 300 atomic bombs. I mean, who presents the existential threat to whom?
The Islamic Republic of Iran continues to actively engage in all international diplomatic and legal efforts to save humanity from the menace of nuclear weapons and their proliferation, including through the establishment of nuclear weapons-free zones, particularly in the Middle East.
Sayed Abbas Araghchi concluded by noting that the establishment of a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East is not only an important objective and priority for Iran, but also other, quote, peace-loving nations in the region. Over the past decades, international efforts to achieve a nuclear weapons-free Middle East have been hampered by Israel's defiance. Tel Aviv is estimated to have hundreds of nuclear warheads in its arsenal and has long refused to open up to international inspections of its nuclear facilities.
Iran has already, since the deal is in place, test-fired ballistic missiles 3 times. Those ballistic missiles, with a range of 1,250 miles, were designed to intimidate not only Israel, which is only 600 miles away, but also intended to frighten Europe and someday maybe hit even the United States.
We know they could reach Israel or hit the tens of thousands of American troops stationed in the Middle East. This is a serious danger.
And here's another. You talk about twisted. Here's another twisted part. Testing these missiles does not even violate the horrible deal that we've made. The deal is silent on test missiles. But those tests do violate the United Nations Security Council resolutions. The problem is no one has done anything about it. We will, I promise we will.
Iranian provocations like the recent ballistic missile tests also are unacceptable and should be answered firmly and quickly, including with more sanctions. Those missiles were stamped with words declaring, and I quote, "Israel should be wiped from the pages of history."
Do you want to hear something really shocking? as many of the great people in this room know, painted on those missiles in both Hebrew and Farsi were the words, "Israel must be wiped off the face of the earth." You can forget that. What kind of demented minds write that in Hebrew?
And because we do not want to see the progress that has been made in any way endangered.
When I'm president, I will adopt a strategy that focuses on three things when it comes to Iran. First, we will stand up to Iran's aggressive push to destabilize and dominate the region.
Because we are determined to keep moving forward along a path that ensures Israel's future as a secure and democratic Jewish state.
To confront Iran's aggression across the region. We cannot forget that Tehran's fingerprints are on nearly every conflict across the Middle East, from Syria to Lebanon to Yemen.
Iran is a problem in Iraq, a problem in Syria, a problem in Lebanon, a problem in Yemen.
And imposed additional sanctions as needed on Iran and the Revolutionary Guard for their sponsorship of terrorism, illegal arms transfers, human rights violations.
And will be a very, very major problem for Saudi Arabia. Literally every day, Iran provides more and better weapons to support their puppet states. Hezbollah, Lebanon, received, and I'll tell you what, it has received sophisticated anti-ship weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, and GPS systems and rockets like very few people anywhere in the world, and certainly very few countries have. Now they're in Syria trying to establish another front against Israel from the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. In Gaza, Iran is supporting Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And in the West Bank, they're openly offering Palestinians $7,000 per terror attack and $30,000 for every Palestinian terrorist home that's been destroyed. A deplorable, deplorable situation.
This stronger consensus has also led to increased cooperation on stopping arms shipments and financial transactions that aid terrorists.
Iran is financing military forces throughout the Middle East.
This is a threat that knows no borders. That's why I've laid out a plan to take the fight to ISIS from the air, on the ground with local forces, and online where they recruit and inspire. Our goal cannot be to contain ISIS. We must defeat ISIS.
Iran has seeded terror groups all over the world. During the last 5 years, Iran has perpetuated terror attacks in 25 different countries on 5 continents. They've got terror cells everywhere, including in the Western Hemisphere, very close to home. Iran is the biggest sponsor of terrorism around the world.
So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province. In terms of our support of opposition groups inside of Syria, I made very clear early on that the United States couldn't impose a military solution on Syria either, but that it was in our interest to make sure that we were engaged with moderate opposition inside of Syria, because eventually Syria will fall. The Assad regime will fall. And we have to have somebody who we're working with that we can help pick up the pieces and stitch back together a cohesive, coherent country. And so we will continue to support them.
We need to talk to all sides, but all parties must know we will always stand with Israel in its struggle for peace and security. Israel should know that the United States will never pressure her to make unilateral concessions or to impose a Made in America solution.
The Palestinians must come to the table knowing that the bond between the United States and Israel is absolutely, totally unbreakable.
That the next president must be ready to say to the world, America's position is unchanging, our resolve unyielding, our stance non-negotiable. The United States stands with Israel, now and forever.
They must come to the table willing and able to stop the terror being committed on a daily basis against Israel. They must do that.
The power of the values we share with Israel are such an unshakable and unbreakable bond.
And they must come to the table willing to accept that Israel is a Jewish state and it will forever exist as a Jewish state.
But you won't need to ask me where I stand, because you already know the answer. I stand with you and for you.
What do you think of Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think he's good, and I like him.
Strong?
He's always been strong. He's always been good to me. He asked me to do a commercial for him. I was his only celebrity that he asked to do a commercial.
Right?
He said, would you do a commercial, when he ran for office? But I think he's very good.
When Prime Minister Netanyahu and I spoke, I suggested a number of concrete steps Israel could take to improve the atmosphere and rebuild confidence. The Prime Minister responded with specific actions Israel is prepared to take toward this end.
It's obvious to anybody the hatred is beyond comprehension of such a big portion. Where the hatred comes from and why, we will have to determine. We're going to have to figure it out. We have to figure it out. We can't live like this.
Many of the young people here today are on the front lines of the battle to oppose the alarming boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement known as BDS. Particularly at a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise across the world, especially in Europe, we must repudiate all efforts to malign, isolate, and undermine Israel and the Jewish people.
We are here today to declare that the Israeli government does not speak for world Jewry, and we are here today to proclaim that a sovereign Jewish state is against our holy Torah.
Says a new report out by Human Rights Watch has confirmed that Israeli security forces routinely abuse Palestinian children, subjecting them to unlawful detentions, beatings, and interrogations. Even just this afternoon, the Israeli government approved an additional 300 illegal settlements to be built by Jewish settlers in the occupied territory of the West Bank. And as the movement to support freedom and justice in Palestine in the United States grows, one man, investigative journalist and author Chris Hedges, has come out with a new piece endorsing the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against the Israeli state. In it, he writes, quote, "Sanctions brought down the apartheid regime of South Africa, and they are what will bring down the apartheid regime of Israel." I spoke earlier with Hedges about his position, and I started by asking him why he's come out with this article now.
Well, it's 1 year, roughly, since the last Israeli assault, 51-day assault on Gaza. Nothing's been rebuilt. 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza still live in what amounts to one of the most horrific open-air prisons in the country. 80% of families depend on Islamic or international relief agencies to survive. This misery isn't going to stop, clearly, until there is a mass movement to make it stop. And just as a mass movement brought down the apartheid regime in South Africa through sanctions, the only mechanism we have left by which we are going to bring down the apartheid regime in Israel is the movement known as boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel. And we've already seen institutions from churches like the Presbyterian Church, colleges, all sorts of institutions across Europe that are latching onto this mechanism as a way to prohibit the Israelis from continuing the repression and indiscriminate slaughter. 500 children were killed last summer in the Israeli bombing. That's the United States. The peace process is a sham. The United States either is unwilling or unable to challenge Israel in any serious way. So this is all we have left.
Dr. Stein, I have a little bit of a concern. I know that you're advocating for boycotting Israel, and I just want to know, why do you single out Israel, being that they are a democratic ally to us? Why don't you do the same for other Middle Eastern states, and many of which are committing horrific crimes and abuse of people?
So let me reassure you, Maria, that's exactly what we are doing.
The greatest scientific mind since Professor Albert Einstein, who I remind you refused to become the first president of what they call Israel, stating that he could not be president of a country whose future happiness was built on the future, past disaster visited on the people whose land had been colonized. The greatest mind since Einstein is, of course, Professor Stephen Hawking. He told Shimon Peres, the so-called president of Israel, over the last few days, that he would not contemplate attending a conference in occupied Palestine because of the Israeli government's crimes against the Palestinian people.
What I have in my hand is a copy of an email that I got this morning from an organization called Boycott from Within, and the man is called Ronnie Barkan, and it's sent to me from Tel Aviv. And the reason he sent me this email this morning was to ask me to make some kind of a statement. He says that, for that matter, at very, very short notice, because there is going to be a vote in the Knesset tomorrow in Israel, trying to make boycotting in Israel a criminal offense, if you can believe that.
It's one of the most effective campaigns against the Israeli regime. The Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Movement, or the BDS, has been implemented by several organizations. But new legislation to be enforced by the British government will make it illegal for local councils, public bodies and some university student unions from boycotting goods and services from Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank.
If you boycott against Israel, New York will boycott you. If you divert revenues from Israel, New York will divert revenues from you. If you sanction Israel, New York will sanction you. Period.
Palestinians will need to do their part by renouncing violence and teaching their children the ways of peace and tolerance. We must show the Palestinians and the moderate Arabs that the path of reconciliation is better than the terrorist road to self-destruction.
When you live in a society where the firefighters are the heroes, little kids want to be firefighters. When you live in a society where athletes and movie stars are the heroes, little kids want to be athletes and movie stars. In Palestinian society, the heroes are those who murder Jews. We can't let this continue. We can't let this happen any longer.
כשאתה לוקח רימון ביד, איך מפעילים אותו?
אתה פותח את הפקק ואז זורק אותו את הנצרה, ואז אתה זורק אותו לעבר האויב.
ומה הבעיה?
בצבא בחיל גבעתי, בעורב.
הוא היה בגבעתי. ומה אתה רוצה להיות?
גם, להמשיך אותו.
אני חושבת שאני אהיה חיילת קרבית.
כן?
שריון.
אז אתה רוצה להיות תותחן שתהיה גדול? אתה רוצה להיות בתותחנים?
כן.
ואיפה אתה רוצה להיות?
בחיל האוויר, לראות טילים מהאוויר.
כשאתם נמצאים על הטנק, אתם מדמיינים משהו?
הם כאילו במלחמה ויורים על הטנק ומנסים לפגוע בי.
מה דמיינת?
שאני הורגת אנשים. הם מסורים והם לובשים מדים בצבע חום ירוק. ערבים.
אני מדמיין שכל פעם אני רואה מולי ערבי מת, זה ממש שמח אותי כבר יותר.
We help to dry up the swamp of fear and pessimism that breeds terrorism. That means supporting education, not just for boys, but for girls too.
In Palestinian textbooks and mosques, you've got a culture of hatred that has been fermenting there for years, and if we want to achieve peace, they've got to go out and they've got to start this educational process. They have to end education of hatred. They have to end it, and now.
And children should not be taught to hate in schools. That poisons the future.
Well, you did mention that these kids that are funded by Hamas and Hezbollah...
They grow up hating.
They're growing up to hate
That's why
Israel.
it's so tough. They grow up hating. They grow up, things we're told to be that are incredible, and I won't even...
To denounce the lessons of hatred and violence that are part of the curricula in Palestinian schools. I wrote with my colleague, Senator Schumer, a letter to President Bush urging his administration to do everything in its power to persuade the Palestinians to reverse their hateful rhetoric and embrace the opportunity to move toward a strong and lasting peace. Joined with Itamar at a Senate hearing where I reiterated the importance of our country making it clear in every way. These children deserve an education that instills respect for life and peace instead of glorifying death and violence. The videos we viewed at that Senate hearing were a clear example of child abuse. I said that at the time, and I repeat it again today.
אין בכלל עם מי לדבר שם. נכון לי, אין עם מי לדבר שם. הייתי שמאלנית אבל התפכחתי. הוכח, עקירת יישובים לא מביאה שלום. אז למה בעולם כועסים עלינו? הבעיה שלנו זה הסברה. צה"ל צבא מוסרי. הבעיה שלנו זה הסברה. רגע חמוד, אבל עוד ילדים רוצים להגיד את התשובה הזאת, נכון? אנחנו לא רוצים לגדל פה בורים. אנחנו מלמדים אותם גיאוגרפיה כבר מגיל צעיר. הנה ישראל הקטנה שלנו במזרח התיכון. מי יודע? הבעיה שלנו זה הסברה. כן, חמוד, אבל עוד לא גמרתי את השאלה, נכון? מי יודע איך קוראים לשאר העולם? אנטישמיה. עכשיו, אתם רוצים שנשחק בשלא יטיפו לנו מוסר? איטלקים. חברו לנאצים בשואה. צרפתים. משטר וישי. והטורקים. טבחו בארמנים. תשובה לא מלאה. וגם בכורדים. נורווגיה. הרגו את כל הסלמונים. אז מה אנחנו אומרים לעולם? שלא יטיפו לנו מוסר. לא יהיה עוד ערבי. תן להם את יהודה ושומרון, והם ירצו את חיפה, ככה זה ערבים. אנחנו אומרים פה ערבים, חמודה. סליחה, נטל דמוגרפי.
These textbooks do not give Palestinian children an education, they give them an indoctrination. When we view this report in combination with other media that these children are exposed to, we see a larger picture that is disturbing. It is disturbing on a human level. It is disturbing to me as a mother. It is disturbing to me as a United States Senator, because it basically, profoundly poisons the minds of these children. Hate has no place in the curriculum of schools, and the glorification has no place. The glorification of violence has no place in the education of children. This propaganda is dangerous.
Meanwhile, every single day, you have rampant incitement and children being taught to hate Israel and to hate the Jews. It has to stop.
We must stop the propaganda to which Palestinian children are being exposed. That must be a priority for all people who care about children.
Can you try and call the police? Can you get these kids to stop, please? Can you get these kids to stop, please?
No, I can't.
It's your job.
It's your job, please.
Can you try and call the police, please?
I don't, my phone's not working. You're talking about my job. Go to sea. Go to England.
Harry? Harry? Can you call the police?
How's the camera doing?
It's okay.
You're not gonna help at all? Huh? What you doing? Work. Work? Yes, is it fucking work? Yes, it's fucking work. What did you call it work? Is that what you call work? I'm not working!
סתם פגרת, עומדת לבכות.
Anna, can you come here for a moment? Anna, can you get Asa, please, on the phone or talk to him personally? And tell him that he needs to go up to the soldier at the post at Tel Rameda? Tell him he has to go to the soldier at the post at Tonomator right now, and there's kids that are throwing stones at the Palestinian house down the pathway. Tell him he has to go right now. Yeah, you should go. You should all go.
Being here today, I am reminded of a passage in Isaiah. Upon your walls, O Jerusalem, I have posted sentinels. All day and all night, they shall never be silent. Just like the sentinels of old, you are never silent, you never grow weary, and you never stop standing up for and fighting for Israel. I've been to Gilo and seen the security fence protecting Israeli families from attacks in their own homes. And I've stood up and spoken out for their right to have that protective fence. And as a
and have no sense of reason or respect for human life. They have no respect for human life.
The attacks are not diminishing, they are continuing. Every opportunity that there can be an attack seems to be seized by those who are rejectionists of any different future. And I worry about the chance for peace when the next generation is learning that fighting Israel is a glorious religious battle for Islam.
There is no moral equivalency. Israel does not name public squares after terrorists.
I believe education is one of the keys to lasting peace and security in the Middle East and the greater region. And for this reason, I am deeply concerned by these findings. We cannot build a peaceful, stable, safe future on such a hate-filled, violent, and radical foundation.
You cannot achieve peace if terrorists are treated as martyrs. Glorifying terrorists is a tremendous barrier to peace. It is a horrible, horrible way to think. It's a barrier that can't be broken.
Children were encouraged to see martyrdom and armed struggle and the murder of innocent people as ideals to strive for.
On February 25th, 1994, the day of the Jews' annual Purim festival, when each year they celebrate a massacre of 75,000 Persians, which they organized more than 2,500 years ago, Captain Goldstein entered a mosque in Hebron and murdered 29 Muslims who were kneeling in prayer, shooting them in the back with his army assault rifle. While he was reloading his assault rifle, surviving worshipers beat him to death.
Just tell me what we did to them.
The Israeli government was not able to keep the massacre hushed up. Immediately after the massacre, one very prominent Orthodox leader, Rabbi Moshe Levinger, told a writer for Israel's largest newspaper that he was sorry for the 29 Palestinians murdered by Goldstein in the same way that he would be sorry for the killing of 29 flies. Another prominent Israeli religious leader, Rabbi Dov Lior, announced, and I quote, "Since Goldstein did what he did in God's own name, he is to be regarded as a righteous man." There was a huge funeral procession for Goldstein, and the Israeli army provided a guard of honor at his grave. One of the eulogists, Rabbi Israel Ariel, said, and I quote, "The holy martyr Baruch Goldstein is from now on our intercessor in heaven. Goldstein did not act as an individual. He heard the cry of the land of Israel, which is being stolen from us day after day by the Muslims. He acted to relieve that cry of the land. A year after the massacre, the Israeli government issued a permit to Goldstein's admirers to build a large monument at the site of his grave. Today, Goldstein's grave is one of the most popular sites in Israel for religious Jewish tourists, especially those from the United States.
For the services of the community to remove you physically. Thank you. Attention, please. The media is respectfully requested to locate themselves west.
What he did was, it was a courageous act, and I think it was a moral act.
We think he didn't kill enough, but thanks God, what he killed, it's good. It's a good beginning.
The most upsetting part of this whole thing isn't that the Arabs were killed. It was that Dr. Baruch Goldstein was killed.
I wish I had the guts to do it too.
Also seen ground-to-ground missiles going in, flares over the northernmost part of the tip, and you can see another rocket going in from Israel, slowly making its way, presumably a precision-guided missile coming into the northern part of the Gaza Strip, and it seems as though the bombardment has been very much in Beit Lahia. Now, the sound that you are hearing here, we're on the top of a hill, and I think you can probably see there are lots of Israelis gathered around who are cheering when they see these kinds of Israeli strikes. And it is an astonishing, macabre and an awful thing, really, to watch this display of fire in the air. But really it is what is going on in the ground, Wolf, that is significant.
But don't you think it'll get worse by bombing them?
No, I think that's the only solution. I think they should just clear off all the city. Just take it off the ground. Yes, I'm a little bit fascist.
And Palestinian leaders need to stop inciting violence, stop celebrating terrorists as martyrs, and stop paying rewards to their families.
You don't reward behavior like that. You cannot do it. There's only one way you treat that kind of behavior. You have to confront it.
There is much Americans can learn from Israel, from cybersecurity to energy security to water security, and just on an everyday people-to-people level.
When I become president, the days of treating Israel like a second-class citizen will end on day one.
Nations built on principles of equality, tolerance, and pluralism.
يوم هذه المأساة يوم أنا بطلع من بيتي الساعة 4 الصبح. قديش بعيد بيتي عن شغلي 4-5 دقائق بالسياره. بلف الكل، بلف على رام الله وبيجي على المعبر هذا عشان الحق الدور.
طيب.
دائما الجنود بدخلوش على السريع. هنا اليوم نطلع وقفنا بالساحات برا. كما فوضى يوم بتكون فوضى على هالمعدل.
كليل، ساكن في كليل. مكتوب ساكن في كليل، روحي إلى كليل. תסתכל מה עושים לנו מהילדים, מה עושים. תסתכלו.
Nobody knows about us here. Nobody.
שקט. ارجعوا بعد ساعة ونص أو ساعتين. اسمعوا، لا اسمعوا. إذا لم تطلعوا من هون بيمسكوكم غاد. ايش لي مزاج شهيد في بروسيا ولا عود ما انت ننسى هون كمان. انا دائما ترقب دائما. שומעים אותי גם? יופי.
מה רוצים לצלם פה?
חיות, דיסקאברי. כל רמאללה זה ג'ונגל, יש שם קופים, כלבים, גורילות. הבעיה שהחיות עכשיו סגורות שם, הם לא יוצאות. מה? לא, אנחנו בני אדם, הם חיות. להם אין צלם אנוש, לנו יש. זה ההבדל בין... בואנה. מה? נצלם, אכפת לי, אני חשבן, למישהו נראה לך. אני גם הרמטכ"לי בעצם.
הם, איך קוראים?
תקשיב שנייה, אדוני.
בהמות.
אני יכול להגיד לך משהו?
אם אין להם ציווי.
אדם זה על שם הדמה לעליון. אדם זה כי הוא יכול לדמה לאלוקים. אוקיי? זה פירוש אדם. אנחנו הפכנו את זה, זאת אומרת העם הפך את זה. והאדם בן אדם, כמו אתה בן אדם, אתה צריך להתנהג כמו בן אדם. אבל בעיקרון זה על שם עליון. אדם זה הדמה לעליון, מכיוון שאנחנו בנים של אלוקים, אז הוא קרא לנו בני אדם. עכשיו, הגויים מה שאין, כן? אלוקים עשה אותם בשביל שיעשו פה...
בשביל לשרת את היהודים. כל הגויים שאתה רואה שיש בעולם, המיליארדים האלה, הם הכל רק בשביל שהיהודים יהיה להם איזה תועלת.
עכשיו,
אנחנו לא רואים את זה, אנחנו לא יודעים בדיוק.
שנייה, כן, היות ואנחנו בגלות, אז אוטומטי עדיין הם עוד לא משרתים אותנו לגמרי, רק חלקית.
כל אחד יהיה לו, כשמשיח יבוא, אז כל אחד יהיה לו אלפים עבדים, 2,800 עבדים.
בינתיים, המשיח לא כאן, אז איך הם משרתים אותנו?
הם בונים לנו רכבים,
בסדר, לא יודעים.
דירות, בניינים, חשמל, הם בונים את זה, לנו, משרתים את היהודים.
אבל יש גם יהודים שעושים את זה.
בקושי.
בסדר, בוא תשמע.
The settlement of Yitzhar in the north of the occupied West Bank. Behind the fences and watchtowers live more than 500 Orthodox Jews. There are a number of religious schools here where boys and young men study the Bible and other religious books under the guidance of local rabbis. One of them is Rabbi Yitzhak Shapira, seen here on the front page of an Israeli daily newspaper. The rabbi has provoked a storm of controversy by publishing a new book in which he appears to authorize the killing of non-Jews who are accused of posing a threat to Israel. The book, called the King's Torah, contains quotations from the Talmud, a scholarly Jewish text, to which the rabbi adds his own opinions and interpretations. In a chapter entitled The Killing of Gentiles in Wartime, the rabbi writes, "In any circumstances where the presence of a Gentile causes danger to Israel, it is permitted to kill the Gentile." In addition, he says, in cases where there is a strong suspicion that someone will continue persecuting Jews, it is permissible to kill him, even if at this moment he is not actively persecuting. But other rabbis disagree with Shapira's interpretation of the Talmud, and they are dismissive of his book.
We have no security when we see armed settlers on the roads.
armed settlers who include Lenny Goldberg and Baruch Levy. They say that they have shot at Palestinians in self-defense.
That's how the Torah demands how Jews to act. It demands that when a Jew is in danger, a Jew must remove the danger.
And you remove the danger?
Yes.
It's because, I mean, I get this question or comment a lot, of course, when I talk about this stuff. A lot of the Jews that I've talked to seem to be very pro-immigration, but not to Israel. Like, do you think that Israel should be taking a lot of Syrian refugees in?
It's probably not in their self-interest.
It's not what I asked.
Man, that's hard.
Not really.
Probably, I mean...
Yes or no?
Probably not.
Why?
Huh?
Why? Don't you all value diversity? Where's your multiculturalism preferences? I mean, why is it bad?
Well, because they sort of want to kill the people that they would immigrate to.
Okay, so but wait a minute. Hang on, man.
Yeah.
Didn't you just give me a whole speech about not judging people collectively? And innocent until proven guilty, my friend? Oh, wait, is that only for Christians? Is that only for white people? When it comes to your country, things get a little different, right?
I mean, well, I'm not saying that they have a right to not let him in. I'm just saying it's probably not in their interest to do it.
Come on. You know you're squirming, right? I don't mean to be mean, but you understand this is a bit tough to hear from the outside, right? You people should accept all these Muslims. When it comes to Israel, oh, man, they want to kill us. It is terrible.
Now, all of this work defending Israel's legitimacy, expanding security and economic ties, taking our alliance to the next level, depends on electing a president with a deep personal commitment to Israel's future as a secure, democratic Jewish state.
That's what will happen when Donald Trump is president of the United States. We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
It is wonderful being here with all of you among so many friends, and I feel like this is a giant family reunion, the largest AIPAC gathering in history, and I feel like I am among family, and thank you for the warm welcome.
I love the people in this room. I love Israel. I love Israel. I've been with Israel so long in terms of I've received some of my greatest honors from Israel. My father before me, incredible. My daughter Ivanka is about to have a beautiful Jewish baby. In fact, it could be happening right now, which would be very nice as far as I'm concerned.
And of course, some of us remember a woman, old in my ear, leading Israel's government decades ago and wonder what's taking us so long here in America.
I've seen the tragic toll of terrorism on 9/11 here at home as well.
In 2001, weeks after the attacks on New York City, and on Washington, and frankly, the attacks on all of us. Attacks that perpetrated, and they were perpetrated by the Islamic fundamentalists. Mayor Rudy Giuliani visited Israel to show solidarity with terror victims. I sent my plane because I backed the mission for Israel 100%.
Now, I know there are some who say you shouldn't be here, who say speaking up for a strong American-Israeli relationship is somehow at odds with America's interests.
Look at all the other trade compacts, economic assistance, military assistance. I'm saying this to you right now. Israel gets approximately $15 billion a year from the American taxpayers. That $15 billion is $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. And people in my district are losing their pension benefits. And this may be you don't want to hear. I don't know. And I certainly don't want to hurt you on your show. You have one of the best. You're fair. But I believe that Israel has a powerful stranglehold on the American government. They control both members of the House and the Senate. They have us involved in wars of which we have little or no interest. Our children are coming back in body bags. Our nation is bankrupt over these wars. And if you open your mouth, you get targeted.
Every American president since Truman has recognized the special relationship and has made it stronger. Israel is stronger because of us and because of you.
On behalf of Zionist Israel, thank you.
Okay. All right, well, let me just tell you that Israel is a very, very important ally of the United States, and we are going to protect them 100%. 100%. They've been our most reliable. It's our true friend over there, and we're going to protect Israel 100%. As to number one, we're with you. Okay, one more. We got to ask one more, because that was a tough question on Israel. That was nasty. Whoa. Are we all for Israel, right? Man. Okay, go ahead.
The United States and Israel have an incredible bond as allies, friends, as partners. We have shared interests, we have shared ideals. And these are not just common values, they are our core values.
This is the real foundation of our alliance. And I think it's why so many Americans feel such a deep emotional connection with Israel. I know that I do.
So I want to thank you very much. This has been a truly great honor. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. So my friends, let us never be neutral or silent in the face of bigotry. Together, let's defend the shared values that already make America and Israel great. Let us do the hard work necessary to keep building our friendship and reach out to the next generation of Americans and Israelis so the bonds between our nations grow even deeper and stronger. We are stronger together.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.